Are you sure that you want to give sovereignty to the people, which they can exercise through elected people, elected leaders, or directly? Eventually, he was persuaded by the president and he accepted to support the constitution. And what we are now worried about, it is what he was saying, be careful about then, but it has come to help us because we now have a bill before us, and the bill before us is a bill that has been produced by Kenyans who chose to exercise the sovereignty power that is given to them by the Constitution directly and not through the elected representative. It is a provision we put in the Constitution knowingly, and I must say that it was really pushed hard by those who were in the civil society then, and the product of that is what we have before us today. Mr. Speaker, I will want to just say a few things so that there are many of us who may have been who have made contributions and can fight their way in our courts of law if we don't attempt to give an alternative view to some of those arguments. And one of them is that, yes, this is a popular initiative. The bill is one of popular initiative. It is brought to us via Article 257. Parliament is empowered or is given the role of enacting legislation to give effect to that Article 257, but that power does not allow Parliament to take over. It cannot give Parliament power that are not enshrined in that. We cannot give ourselves the power that is not enshrined in that Constitution. The other aspect that is also there is the issue of the role of Parliament in the bill that we have today. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that it is true and it has happened. Typo errors, I believe they can be dealt with for as long as we are not changing the form of the bill or the content in any way. And we can be able to deal with typo errors. But again, as you pointed it out to us in the morning, we have even the current constitution with typo errors. We are dealing with it. It doesn't go to killing the constitution, and especially those errors that don't go to that. They can actually be left if we think we are going to argue for no good reason. We have the issue of there is the argument that some of the amendments are unconstitutional. And Mr. Speaker, let me say that there is nothing unconstitutional in what we are doing. You can always make a proposal to amend the Constitution. That proposal can never be unconstitutional for as long as it has been made by those people who have the sovereign power, and that is the Wajikos of this country. So whatever it is that is before us cannot be unconstitutional because the sovereign power is with the Wajiko, not with the judiciary, not with the Parliament, nor is it with the executive. Mr. Speaker, and I think it is important to point out that these are issues that were argued, and one can always speak up on some of the cases that have been there. This issue came up with Joya and 6 others some while back, and you can actually see those rulings having been made that early, that Wajiko has the sovereign power. Mr. Speaker, I think it is also important to point out that if we can pay attention to the way this bill has been titled. It is titled as a bill for an act to amend the Constitution by popular initiative, not as an act of Parliament, because this is not an act of Parliament. This is an act, a bill for an act to amend the Constitution in line with the popular initiative. I think it is also important to point that out. And it brings out the wishes of the people directly and not the wishes of those of us who are seated here today. And it is important, Mr. Speaker, also to say that you never bring amendments to an amending act. I think this is something, and I think it is also important to know that we will be trying to implement, we will be implementing what will be is contained in this bill, and once it is done, we don't revoke it, but then it becomes a spent document, always available for us to refer, but all that will be contained in it will then be superimposed on the existing constitution. Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of the referendum, and again, we have the question, there are those who have argued that we needed multiple choices or something. But again, we had this 2010 constitution. And again, we use one single constitution, one question, which was a yes or no on 256 articles. This is about 70 again, so we don't have to belabor that issue for too long. Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of the question of 70 constituencies, and I must agree entirely with the presentation that was made by Mheshimiwa Kapinga. He made it easy for Kenyans to understand, and they were not created arbitrarily. There is a reason, there is a formula that was used, and the promoters again picked this because this is an issue that has been nagging for many of us. The issue was that the mandate of IEBC, that's the aspect that I would want to deal with on that aspect. The mandate of IEBC, it is not to create constituencies, it's to deal with boundaries. The mandate of to create constituencies is with the Wajiko, and Wajiko has added 70 for the reasons that he has given. IEBC now has the work of ensuring that the boundaries are cut out. That is the mandate of IEBC. And again, as Mheshimiwa Kapinga has done, he has demonstrated to us how those 70 constituencies were arrived at. And again, Mr. Speaker, you cannot say that IEBC, you cannot remove the power from Wajiko to do that. When we had the protected constituencies, and Daragwa is one of them, again, it was Wajiko who said, yes, we have now 290 constituencies. I think 27 of them were going to be extinct. Only that Wajiko decided that these 27 constituencies remained protected for X number of years, which was expiring around this year or next year. But again, given the formula that has been put across, we thank God and we are happy, and I can tell you that the people of Daragwa and the people of Nyandarua and elsewhere, we will be supporting this because we were going to be part of the people who are going to cease having a constituency. But with this amendment, we now have constituencies that are not now protected by any clause in the Constitution, but as a right, as other Kenyans continue enjoying the same. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go back to that issue because I was talking about it, that Kenyans can exercise their power directly. And the issue of wanting to, the Kenyans can exercise the power they have donated to us directly, and that is what they have done today. And I think it is important for us to seize the opportunity when it comes our way next time, so that we are able to propose some of these changes ahead of time. The basis for creating, again, let me leave that out. IEBC, Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that IEBC has no powers to create new constituencies. And this is something that is contained in the report that we have read, but it has powers to determine where but they cannot create new constituencies as some people will have to do. It is only Kenyans who can add new constituencies. They can align boundaries, but not create new constituencies. But it's also important for members to know that it is very difficult for IEBC to align boundaries outside a county. So this has come to help us deal with an issue that was going to be a major problem to us as a country, when the population within a county did not meet the expected threshold. Now this helps us deal with that aspect, which was going to be problematic. I say this because we had sat with IEBC, and they raised that as an issue that required the intervention of this House. But again, Wajiko has decided to do that directly. The issue of the judiciary ombudsman, Mr. Speaker, again, this is not, I think there is a confusion. This office will not impede judicial independence. The ombudsman reports to the JSC. He does not, his findings will go to the Judicial Service Commission, and not, he will not be seen to be implementing them directly. But it is important that Kenyans have now a way of interacting with the judiciary through that office that has been given power. And it is also important to know that this office was created by the first Chief Justice, what was the name of the first? Mutunga, Willy Mutunga. He created this office. All that we are doing now is to clothe it with some constitutional protection. The former Chief Justice downgraded it, and perhaps we may be seeing some of the repercussions for his having degraded that office. Yes, Mr. Maraga, Chief Justice Maraga downgraded it. Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of the I'll leave that one of issue of the judges. I will not. Let me just skip that one. But it is important that we note that the vetting of ministers has again been removed from the members of the House or from Parliament for the reason that, one, they are here in this House, but if we think that we should bring them back again, you can always bring that vetting back to the House. But as it is, they have been removed from vetting by members, by ourselves, because they will also be sitting here. They will have been elected like we will have been elected, and I think it is only fair that that is also arraigned. There is another inclusion that people have thought about. This is the issue of professional fees being charged. That is harmonizing the same. Again, it is the sovereignty of the people to determine any clause in the Constitution that is supreme, and it is not unprofessional when those fees have been harmonized. The issue of having to get those at the national and the county charging the same. Mr. Speaker, let me jump to the issues that have been canvassed by some of our colleagues here. And I want to say that, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, let me say that
member for Kwale County.
Haya, asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipatia nafasi hii na mimi kuchangia katika huu mswada muhimu sana katika historia ya nchi yetu. Ilikuwa nimepanga hapo awali kuchangia mswada huu kwa lugha ya Kiingereza kwa sababu nilikuwa mmoja ya wanachama katika kamati na tuliangazia masuala mengi ambayo yana utata ambayo yameweza kutajwa ndani ya bunge. Lakini kwa sababu kuna waheshimiwa wenzangu walokuja hapo awali kuzungumza mambo ambayo mengine kuko sio ya ukweli, nikaona ni muhimu kuzungumza, kutoa mchango wangu kwa lugha ya Kiswahili ili kuhakikisha kuwa wapwani watakapoamua kura ya maoni kiwafikia, wakiamua kupigia kura mswada huu, watapigia kura mswada huu wakijua ukweli wa mambo yalivyo halisi. Asante. Kwa hivyo mwanzo nataka kusema kutoka mwanzo kuwa naunga mswada huu mkono, kisha naunga sana. Na mimi pia nataka kutoa shukran kwa Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga ambaye ni kinara wa chama changu na alikuwa waziri mkuu wa nchi hii, na pia kumshukuru Rais Uhuru Kenyatta kwa mwanzo kwa handshake kama kwa kupeana mkono, na pia kuja na hii sheria ya BBI kwa sababu kwa kweli imeleta mambo mazuri sana ambayo yatatusaidia kupunguza kutengwa kwa sehemu nyingine za nchi hii. Ningependa pia kujulisha bunge hili kama nilivyosema awali kuwa mimi nilikuwa mwanachama katika kamati ya sheria ya JLAC ilojadili ripoti hii na kuja kwa ripoti hii, na ningependa kushukuru kila mmoja aliyechangia ripoti hii kuwa nzuri ilivyo, kwa sababu kamati hii ilipoongozwa na wenyekiti wetu wawili wa Bunge la Kitaifa na Seneti liliangalia masuala tofauti tofauti kwa upana na kwa urefu. Mimi ni mmoja pia katika hii kamati ya wale ambao walitia sahihi ile ripoti ndogo ambayo ilikuwa inaangazia masala ya kuwa na maeneo bunge 70 mapya. Nimesema toka hapo awali katika kamati yangu katika mazungumzo, na pia tulikubaliana katika kamati kuwa mswada wote ama kipengele chochote katika mswada ambacho kinapinga katiba kikishapitishwa katika kura ya maoni, kipengele hicho kinakuwa kipengele halali cha katiba. Kwa hivyo sikukubaliana kamwe na wenzangu katika kamati waliosema kuwa ile sehemu ya pili ama schedule 2 kuwa ile si ya kikatiba. Sikukubaliana nao, kwa sababu sote katika kamati tulikubaliana kuwa kipengele chochote, iwapo maoni yako unaona kuwa ni kinyume na katiba, lakini wananchi wa Kenya wakishapitisha katika kura ya maoni, sehemu hiyo inakuwa katiba. Na mimi hata hivyo sikubaliani pia hata hivi sasa kuwa sehemu hiyo ya katiba yenye kuorodhesha zile eneo bunge 70 kuwa ni kinyume cha katiba. Na sababu ni kuwa kwa sehemu 257 ya katiba yetu inatoa ruhusa Mkenya yoyote kuleta kipengele chochote au mswada wowote wa kubadilisha katiba. Hata hivyo Mkenya pia anaweza, kwa mfano kama ilivyoashiriwa jana na kiongozi wa walio wachache bungeni, mwananchi wa Kenya anaweza pia akaleta kipengele, kwa mfano akasema kuwa hataki kuwe na bunge humu nchini. Pia anaweza akasema kuwa hataki kuwa na mahakama humu nchini, ama anataka mfumo tofauti sana, pengine tofauti sana na vile ambavyo tuko nao, na katiba inamruhusu kuleta kipengele hicho. Je, kipengele tu cha kuongeza eneo bunge? Na zaidi ya hapo, kando na haki, kwa sababu kuna baadhi ambao walikuwa wanataka waje bunge waseme kuwa tubadilishe hii sehemu ya mswada huo, na kamati yetu tumezungumza na naona Bwana Spika umekubaliana kuwa hatuwezi kubadilisha sehemu yoyote ya hii katiba, kwa sababu kuna njia mbili peke yake za kubadilisha katiba katika katiba yetu tulionayo sasa. Njia moja ni ya kibunge kupitia hapa bunge, kupitia wabunge wenyewe, na njia nyingine ni ya watu wa Kenya wengi ambayo inaweza kupitishwa na Mkenya yoyote yule. Kwa hivyo pia katika huu mswada kuna watu tunasahau zaidi ya 3 milioni waliotia sahihi kuunga mswada huu, na wengi wao nina hakika waliunga mswada huu kwa sababu ya orodha ya eneo bunge hizi zaidi 70. Kwa hivyo itakuwa tunakiuka haki zao za kikatiba kuwaambia kuwa mswada huu hauwezi kuwa hapo ndani ya katiba. Najua watu wengine pengine wanaangalia mswada huu umeletwa na aliyekuwa waziri wetu Raila Amolo Odinga na mheshimiwa rais wetu Uhuru Kenyatta, lakini katiba kama nilivyosema hapo awali ina njia mbili peke yake ya kubadilisha katiba hiyo, na wao wana haki kabisa kama Mkenya mwingine, kwa sababu bado ni Wakenya, wanakura, wanapiga kura, wana haki kubadilisha katiba iwapo wanaona. Ndio maana na mheshimiwa Millie Odhiambo nadhani jana alipokuwa anakuuliza maoni yako Bwana Spika, aliuliza je, katika haki za hizi nchi kuna Mkenya mwingine ambaye ana haki zaidi na mwenzake, na nina hakika kuwa utakuja utatuambia kuwa kila mtu ana haki sawa, hata kama ni mwananchi wa Kenya ama ni rais wa hii nchi. Katika kuongeza pia maoni mengine, sehemu au kipengele cha 50 cha mswada huu unasema kuwa kaunti zetu ziweze kuongezewa fedha kutoka 15% hivi sasa ambayo iko kwenye katiba mpaka 35%. Kwa kweli hili ni jambo zuri sana. Hii asilimia 15 tu toka mwaka 2013 tulipoanza ugatuzi, wananchi sehemu nyingi ya nchi wameona faida na tofauti ya uongozi wa ugatuzi na uongozi tukiwa na serikali ya juu peke yake. Na kama mabadiliko yamekuja licha ya changamoto tofauti na asilimia 15, je, asilimia 35 itaweza kuleta mabadiliko gani katika hii nchi? Kuna wengine ambao wana propaganda, wanataka kupinga mswada huu kwa sababu ya sababu zao moja au nyingine. Wanatatiza wananchi kuambia kama sasa serikali inashindwa kutuma asilimia 15 kwa county, je, itaweza kutuma asilimia 35? Lakini hii hisabu ni ya rahisi kabisa. Ni hisabu hata inaweza kufundishwa katika shule ya chekechea. Ni kama vile mfano wa kibenki ama kibakuli chako kina senti. Nchi au kikapu cha nchi cha pesa. Zile pesa zitakazopata katika nchi hii kwa mwaka huu, asilimia 15 hivi sasa inaenda kwa serikali za county. Kwa hivyo serikali ikipata bilioni 1, ikipata trilioni, ikipata hata shilingi 100, lazima asilimia 15 iende kwa serikali za county. Kwa hivyo kusema asilimia 35 ni ule mkebe kila siku au ule mfuko wa kila mwaka ndo utagawanywa, asilimia 35 lazima ziende mashinani. Na hata hivi sasa kukiwa na serikali za county zinalalamika kwa kuwa pesa zao zinacheleweshwa, lakini bado mwisho wa siku zinafika kwa sababu ya kipengele hichi kwenye katiba. Na badili ya kuacha senti zikae Nairobi, siku nyingi tumekuwa tukilalamika kuwa pesa zinaenda sehemu nyingine ya nchi ama zinashughulikia watu wengine. Sasa pesa hizi zinaongezwa mashinani ili wananchi waweze kufaidika na serikali yao iliyo karibu. Mimi hushangaa kila masaa wananchi wa kawaida katika mitandao, katika sehemu zingine za mazungumzo, sio wengi nashukuru, lakini bado nashangaa hao wananchi wakiwa wanapinga katiba hii. Kwa sababu katiba hii kama nilivyosema italeta manufaa mashinani. Pia kitu chengine ambacho italeta ni maeneo bunge ambayo yataweza kuongezwa yameweza kuongezwa. Tuna maeneo bunge 70 mapya yameongezwa. Kwa sisi wa Pwani mwanzo bila BBI, na hili ni jambo muhimu sana kwa Wapwani kujua. Bila BBI kuna eneo bunge 10 ambazo zitakuwa hazipo tena mwaka baada ya mwaka 2022 tukienda kura, kwa sababu ya katiba hii ya sasa inavyosema. Wananchi katika eneo hizo bunge hawatoshelezi, kwa hivyo ni lazima IBC iweze kufuta maeneo bunge hayo 10. Na maeneo bunge hayo 10 sehemu ya Pwani yako Lamu, yako Tana River, yataondolewa Taita Taveta, na hata Kwale County nakotoka Matuga alikoko itashikwa. Kwa hivyo BBI imesaidia maeneo bunge hayo 10 Pwani yasifutike. Lengine ni kuwa BBI imeongezea Pwani, na sio kwa upendeleo, ni haki yetu ya miaka mingi kulingana na idadi ya watu waliomo humo ndani, ndio tumeongezewa eneo bunge hizo 10. 4 zitaenda kaunti ya Kilifi, 3 zitaenda kaunti ya Mombasa, na 3 zingine zitaenda kaunti ya Kwale ninayotoka. Kwa hivyo nawasihi wa Pwani kwa hilo waunge mkono BBI iwapo kura ya maoni itakuja mashinani. Na pia wabunge wenzangu, kwa mfano pia mheshimiwa mbunge wa eneo bunge la Malindi aliyokuja hapa kupinga mswada huu, kumwambia kubali tafadhali, badilisha maoni yako, rudi nyuma na uunge mkono huu mswada wa BBI, kwa sababu kaunti yako ya Kilifi itapata eneo bunge 4 mpya ambazo zitapatia wananchi uwakilishi mwingi zaidi, itapatia wananchi CDF ambayo itasaidia nyingi zaidi basari, itasaidia ujenzi wa barabara, na itasaidia pia CDF itasaidia masala ya kujenga shule na kuhakikisha pia shule zetu zina vifaa vya sayansi ambapo hivi sasa shule zetu hazina. Lengine pia muhimu sana la kuangazia ni masala ya jinsia. Kwa mara ya kwanza huenda Kenya tukawa viongozi ulimwengu nzima kwa kusawazisha masala ya jinsia. BBI inaleta kwa mara ya mwisho, baada ya kujaribu mara nyingi sana hapa bungeni, inaleta usawa wa ile sheria yetu ya 2/3 ya jinsia hapa bungeni letu, bunge la kitaifa. Hapo awali katiba yetu ya 2010 ilikuwa imetengeneza sheria kusaidia seneti na swala hilo, ikawa sheria hiyo iko kwenye katiba, na pia ilisaidia serikali za kaunti kuweza kutimiza hiyo sheria ya 3/3. Lakini wale walotunga katiba ya 2010 walisahau kutuwekea kipengele cha hapa bunge ambao kitasawazisha jinsia tatu. Kwa hivyo BBI inaleta hicho kipengele na hiyo shida itaisha na BBI. Na lengine kwa masala ya jinsia, tutakuwa nusu kwa nusu, au Waingereza wanasema 50-50 katika seneti. Pale senate itakuwa wananchi wakichagua seneta wawili, mmoja wa kike na mmoja wa kiume. Hili ni jambo kubwa sana ambalo duniani ni vigumu sana, hata nchi zinazoongoza wameshindwa kufika idadi kama hii. Lengine ni katika ugavana, katika gavana mwenyewe na naibu wa gavana, italazimu kama gavana ni mwanamume achukue mdogo wake mwanamke, au kama gavana ni mwanamke achukue mdogo wake mwanamume, na hiyo pia italeta nusu kwa nusu uwakilishi wa kijinsia. Hayo ni mambo muhimu sana ya maendeleo. Wengi huuliza saa nyingine kwa nini ni muhimu kuwa na usawa wa jinsia. Nikiwa Kwale County napenda kueleza wananchi hivi. Ni mfano wa shughuli ya nyumbani kama harusi au mazishi. Je, katika familia unaweza kufanya harusi, shughuli ndogo tu, ikafaulu na wanawake peke yake, au unaweza kufanya harusi au mazishi na wanaume peke yake? Na jibu mara nyingi ni kuwa haiwezekani, ama ikifanyika shughuli haitafana. Kwa hivyo hiyo ndio umuhimu wake. Na lengine ambao nataka kusema, wengine wamekuja hapa wakasema kuwa na wabunge zaidi itakuwa mzigo kwa taifa. Huo si ukweli. Mzigo mkubwa Kenya yetu ni ufisadi ambao unakula 2/3 ya pesa zetu za bajeti za mwaka mzima. Bunge inatumia bajeti 1% peke yake, 1% peke yake au zaidi kidogo katika Kenya nzima kila mwaka, na hata zikiongezeka haitaongezeka sana. Na mwisho, kuna watu wanasumbua watu kuambia kuna kopi tofauti za BBI. Hamna. Kosa lilikuwa kwa moja ya nambari 1 peke yake ambayo hata haiko kwenye katiba. Na kwa hayo pia nasema shukran, naunga mkono, na nawaomba wabunge wenzangu waunge mkono, na Wakenya kwa jumla ikija kwenye kura za maoni waunge mkono mswada huu. Asante.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to also participate in this moment that I consider a very important moment in contributing to this bill that is before us. And let me begin by saying that indeed I feel privileged that this is the second time that I happen to be a member of parliament when we are actually amending the Constitution. And I want to say I was actively involved prior to the 2010 Constitution in the clamor for a new Constitution. And many lives were lost. Many lives were lost. And Mr. Speaker, I'll never forget the number of times we went to the streets of this city and in many other towns in this country trying to push for a new Constitution. And one of the biggest things that really drove us to do that was to make sure we had a Constitution that treated all Kenyans equally. A Constitution that gives freedoms and rights to the people of Kenya. A Constitution that ensured that this Kenya belonged to everybody. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I consider any effort to review the 2010 Constitution as a very important process, a sacred process, a process that should not be seen to be taking away any gain that we fought for in the 2010 Constitution. If it does so, even in the smallest way, it becomes a real threat to the future of this nation. Mr. Speaker, the Independence Constitution was amended well over 29 times. And in each single amendment, Mr. Speaker, it took away from the people and gave more power to the executive. It became such a distorted document until the final document could not even be compared to the first document. And I would hate, personally, as a member of this House, to be one of those that played a role in changing a constitution and taking away whatever gains the citizens of Kenya had gotten out of the 2010 constitution. And therefore, I'm listening to some very good things being said about this bill. And there are some very good things in this bill. But I want to tell this House that there are some very, very dangerous amendments in this bill that we are moving to amend the 2010 constitution that will become a real issue, many, many years down the line. And we had hoped that we had created a constitution that will pass the test of time. We had hoped that we will not have people wanting to do what those others had done to the Independence Constitution by wanting to give themselves power at the expense of Mwananchi or at the expense of Kenyans. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, one of the things I'm asking myself is just how important are these amendments? First of all, at a time when Kenyans are expecting that we should be more sensitive to the real issues affecting them, one of them being the corona pandemic and the impact it has had on the citizenry. Today, many Kenyans have lost their jobs. Today, many Kenyans do not even know where to earn a living. Today, many Kenyans cannot access the vaccine. But all of us in this House have been vaccinated, Mr. Speaker. So for me, I worry about that. But let me move on, Mr. Speaker, to speak about the real issue today. Mr. Speaker, can the leader of majority just let me contribute without interrupting me?
There's a point of order. Leader of majority.
Honorable Speaker, I did not intend to interrupt any member because these are constitutional moments. But the Honorable nominated member, Sisi Barre, has just made a very serious allegation that there are some dangerous provisions that are contained within this bill. Does not go ahead to tell us which are these dangerous provisions in this bill and proceeds to tell us about corona, which is not included in this bill. Is she in order to mislead this House and Kenyans that there are some dangerous provisions within this BBI bill without mentioning those provisions, and then goes ahead to totally irrelevant matters dealing with pandemics and all that are not the subject matter of this bill?
You know, Mr. Speaker, with all respect to the leader of majority, if you had accepted to sit right where you are and give me time, I was going to those dangerous clauses. So please, just don't disrupt me. Allow me to speak. And I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. When we were amending the 2010 Constitution, because the Constitution is about all of us, all Kenyans, the then government allowed people to give their views. The then government allowed even ministers. I remember the Minister for Agriculture then, Honorable William Ruto, the Minister for Special Programs then, Naomi Shaban, were in the no camp, but nobody intimidated them. So don't think you'll come here and intimidate me.
Please, honourable members, so that
Mr. Speaker,
just allow me to listen
allow me
also,
to proceed,
please.
Mr. Speaker. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to proceed. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we fought for when we were fighting for the 2010 Constitution was the independence of the institutions of government. was the independence of the three arms of government. And if there was a big gain that we gained as the people of Kenya, was to ensure that the three arms of government, executive, parliament, judiciary, were truly, truly independent. Some of you who probably never had a chance to face the wrath of the dictator regime that was there then may not appreciate those gains. But those that followed what was going on then will appreciate that one of the major gains we achieved was really the independence of the three arms of government. The minute we allowed the executive to have control of parliament, the minute we allowed the executive to have control of the judiciary, that is the beginning of the end of our democracy, Mr. Speaker. And so allow me to mention some of those things that I find not good for this nation going forward. One of them, Mr. Speaker, and by the way, that is why one Honorable Raila Odinga, who I respect very much, fought very hard for that new constitution. And if there's a man I know went out of his way, sacrificed for the 2010 constitution, it was the Honorable Raila Odinga. It is sad that again we are taking away those gains and he happens to be supporting. But allow me, Mr. Speaker, to begin with the issue, Mr. Speaker, of the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, the judiciary is very, very important. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that if judiciary is not fully dependent, any of us seated here can be a victim. If the judiciary was not independent, TJ Kajwang would be behind bars right now of treason. TJ Kajwang would be behind bars today of treason, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what is happening, one of the things that this bill has done is to take away, is it page 14? I'm trying to get to the judiciary. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Yes, it says this, Article 47, that the Judicial Service Commission, on top of all the functions that are already stipulated in the current constitution, it goes further to say that the Judicial Service Commission will receive complaints against judges, investigate, discipline judges by warning, reprimanding, or suspending of a judge. Currently, Mr. Speaker, in the current constitution, the thing that the judicial service does is they will investigate, they will come up with their findings, they will take it to the president, who will then form a tribunal. Now, what is happening by bringing this particular amendment, it means that judges going forward are fully exposed. Their security of tenure is under threat, Mr. Speaker. The security of tenure of the judges going forward is under threat, Mr. Speaker. Where will we get justice if a judge knows that they have a chance that they could lose their job?
That's a point of argument. I mean,
yes, please, that's my opinion. You'll have your chance. Mr. Junet, you even already
you know, somebody else will come and say,
please.
Somebody else will have an opportunity. Sorry, I'll give you back your, give you back your 2 minutes.
Yes.
But somebody else is at liberty to say, when they are exposed to the president, they are not as independent as when they are being dealt with by. So this is one point, this is one side of the argument. So you can argue the opposite side. So
Mr. Speaker,
yes, you have your time.
That for me worries me, because judges going forward will no longer have the independence that they enjoy right now. Then we go further and say we're establishing an office of the judicial ombudsman, who again is appointed by the president. Good people, where is the independence of the judiciary? Please tell me, where is the independence of the judiciary? Mr. Speaker, I want to move forward, Mr. Speaker, and talk about the National Police Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, the National Police Service Commission had very clear functions in the 2010 Constitution. But I think somewhere along the way, somebody got uncomfortable with the fact that the Police Service Commission was doing its job and a few people were uncomfortable that they are not able to control the running of that commission. So as a result, what have we done? Taken away key functions of the National Police Service Commission and given them to an individual called the IG. This is a person who can receive a phone call anytime and is given instructions and he can do anything. So what have we said? We have said, Mr. Speaker, I'm losing my eyesight, Mr. Speaker, I'm growing older. We have said this, Mr. Speaker, that in clause 2, we delete paragraph B and substitute therefore the following new paragraph. That the B shall exercise independent command over the service, that is the IG, determine promotions and transfers within the service, that is the IG, exercise disciplinary control through suspension of officers in the service, that is the IG, perform any other functions prescribed by legislation. Good people, we are moving away from an institution called a commission and taking these powers to an individual called the IG. Are we taking away gains or are we helping the National Police Service Commission? What happens to those officers who in the Moi days would go for years? You are a corporal for 40 years, you'll never be promoted because you don't belong to the right community. What happens to that officer? We are better off with a commission than an individual, good people. We must never create a law with an individual in mind. We create a law for posterity. That is what we were fighting for in 2010. Let me move forward, Mr. Speaker. We have a very important commission called the SRC. SRC is a commission that is constituted and stakeholders who will be affected by the decisions of that commission are represented in that commission. Mr. Speaker, SRC has a representative of the Parliamentary Service Commission, the Police Service Commission, the Judicial Service Commission, the Teacher Service Commission, the Defense Council, COTU, etc. Now, what this bill has done, they have decided that the SRC will be formed by commissioners who will come from wherever, professionals with the skill appointed by the executive. Now, who will protect the workers? Who will protect? Of course, you don't know workers because you don't care. That is what has happened to this house. I'm sorry. We've become very selfish, very self-driven. It's all about us. We don't care about wananchi. Otherwise, today, we'll be talking about the vaccine for these people. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. While I know this is going to go on, this bill is going to go on anyway, because by the writers of the Constitution, our role seems to be very minimal. But let me say this. I pray that this thing doesn't go through. Yes. And why I say so is because this thing takes away gains that we fought for with our lives, with our sweat, with our blood. I pray this thing doesn't go through because I know one day we will have another president who will be worse than the previous dictators we've had in the past. And you people will come here to make noise about what will be going wrong at that time. And you are the ones responsible. So I want to go down.
Member Voseme. Member Voseme.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I'll start by saying that the importance of the bill we have today is not so much in the contents as in the history and the background of this bill. Mr. Speaker, we must go back. How did this bill come to be? Mr. Speaker, we have had terrible issues of violence after every election. Mr. Speaker, in 2007, what I saw when I was Director of Medical Services, how people were dying, many of us did not see. What I saw in Naivasha, what I saw in Londiani, what I saw in burnt forest, Mr. Speaker, I was able to actually see people burning others' houses over the helicopter. Mr. Speaker, again in 2017, 2018, which we've come through, people have indicated here the violence that we had. Mr. Speaker, on one day only in this country, 30 young people died between the airport and Uhuru Park. Mr. Speaker, because all of us believed at that time that the only way you will have access to services and access to welfare is if your person is at the helm of governance. Mr. Speaker, on that day, in that week, Mr. Speaker, in Uhuru Park, if the president had not been magnanimous, when we went in for the swearing in, this country would have seen bloodshed. But the two leaders, Mr. Speaker, decided that there must be a way forward. So they had a handshake. That stopped the violence. The country had literally stopped. Nairobi was ungovernable. But it's not only stopping that was important. Mr. Speaker, what was also important is why is this happening year in, year out, and why are Kenyans going for each other's necks? Mr. Speaker, that brought, after the handshake, brought the Building Bridges Initiative. In my view, Mr. Speaker, this initiative is to try and identify what are the problems that has beset the country since 1963 and has stopped this country from progressing in the way our forefathers imagined. And that initiative looked at those issues. The issue of our ethos. Why is it that in this country, corruption has become something acceptable? Maybe people our age may see corruption as something wrong, but our children are seeing it as normal, a way of life. Can we live like that? Mr. Speaker, why is it that people always talk of our rights, but nobody talks of our responsibility? Can we have a country where everybody extracting their rights, but nobody is exacting their responsibility? Mr. Speaker, these are the problems. Mr. Speaker, why do you have ethnic division and ethnic antagonism? On every issue, even here on the floor of the House, many times, even our politics is driven by that. Because we do not believe we are one nation. We are a state by law, but are we a nation at heart? Mr. Speaker, why the other issue is inclusivity. Why do some people believe that they're not part of the system? That if your man is not at the top, you are not part of the country, you are not part, you will not get the services, you will not get the appointment. Why is it that economically, the youth, gender issues, they believe that some people are not part of it? Mr. Speaker, these are the problems. Mr. Speaker, why is that people who are corrupt, obviously and sometimes openly corrupt, actually are the people that run the system, claim to run the system, decide to run the system, fight to run the system, and they do. Mr. Speaker, they also noticed this, the 9 agenda, the issue of devolution. So to me, Mr. Speaker, the BBI initiative was trying to seek how we can go back on the path that we lost from 1963 and take this country back to where we wanted it. Mr. Speaker, there are some of us here who may not believe that in the 70s, the public hostels were better than the private hostels. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, in 76, 77, as a medical student, we were transferring patients from Aga Khan to Kenyatta Hospital because they were better hostels. As an intern, I was transferring children from Aga Khan Hospital in Kisumu to the provincial hospital, which is now Jaramogi Hospital, because they were better services. Mr. Speaker, the public schools were better than the private schools. Many of us here, our age, went to public schools. They were the standard. How has it come that now it is public things that actually serve the majority of Kenyans that actually second grade? Now that if public schools do better, people are wondering whether that is real. But in reality, that is how it should be. That is where the majority of people are served. So, Mr. Speaker, that is what led to the solutions that we are seeking through this amendment. We are seeking to see, can this amendment take us back to where we wanted to be? Mr. Speaker, I accept that some of the amendments actually will take us there. I therefore support this bill. For example, we are going to have the leader of opposition, official opposition in parliament. Obviously, if you have an election and the leader of opposition feels comfortable in parliament, we shall not run in the streets. So that will definitely solve the problem. Mr. Speaker, if we look at the structuring of the executive, when you look at clause 28, which is amending Article 151, establishment of the office of the Prime Minister, the office of the Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this will go a long way in actually stabilizing the system. Some people have argued that this will be expensive. If the establishment, those offices are more expensive than the losses we incur every time after elections. It cannot be. So when you establish those offices and the stability, that's okay. And moreover, when the office of the Prime Minister is established, we will actually appoint the Prime Minister from this House. In fact, it's giving the House more power in the executive than probably we have now, at least the establishment of them. We shall have ministers in the House. We have been trying to get ministers here. Mr. Speaker tried that we get the ministers come and they be at the corner. That could not be allowed. Now this, we shall have them here. So we shall have them in the House. The only thing I may comment about that, removal of the function, the mandate of this House to vet the ministers, that's something we look at. Mr. Speaker, the amendments you can see actually in this about the responsibilities and lining out what the responsibility of a citizen is are extremely important. People can say these are our rights, but people must know these are the responsibilities that we have. Haki yetu must actually be accompanied by jukumu letu. We can't just have haki. Well, what is our responsibility to the nation? So that clause 4, which amending Article 8, is important. Mr. Speaker, we have had the issue of gender parity, which actually threatened. There was even a decision of the court that this House actually be dissolved. These amendments are actually bringing that by restructuring the Senate so that we have equal members, male and female, in the Senate without really any problem. So that solves a problem we have not been able to solve for 5 years. Honorable Duale actually brought how many amendments? How many Duale bills? 4. And none of them passed. This amendment has solved it at once. In the National Assembly itself, we have adopted what is in Article 177, which was actually in the National Assemblies, so that we appoint people after the election to meet the gender requirement. Some people are saying that will be a big house and that will be expensive. But inclusivity, leaving half your team out, can never be expensive. Let's bring all the people in. So we can do that. And in any case, this is something that with time will actually solve itself. So, Mr. Speaker, I think there were very progressive amendments in this bill. Mr. Speaker, look at devolution. Every year we have a big problem with the division of revenue. Every year we have a division of money in the counties. Some things have happened in the counties, but some counties have actually never been able to operate efficiently because of the amount of money that we give them. So we stuck to 15%. We sit here in this assembly looking at only 15% for the counties, while for the national government at the position of budget policy statement, we have all the details of what every department and every state department needs. We don't look at what actually the county needs. We just say at least 15%. That is not a way to do any division. So adding this to 35%, Mr. Speaker, I think takes us a long way. But that is something we will have to look at. I've always looked at. We have to look at the role of IBEC in actually the division of revenue. I think we have a problem there. But at least this amendment solves that temporarily. Mr. Speaker, our county assemblies have been held at ransom by governors. Governors have literally held our county assemblies at ransom. They cannot run, they cannot, anything they want to do, they have to ask for money from the governor. The amendment we have now that is actually creating the county assembly fund so that it's run more the way we run the parliamentary service with the money. So imagine every time we were to go to the executive to ask for money on daily basis to run the National Assembly or to run the Senate. It definitely would not work. So freeing our assemblies so that they can actually oversight the governance is extremely important. Coupled with the fact that we actually, a member was saying that next year we have to look at the qualifications of the members of the county assembly. I think that's a law that was passed and actually it was just postponed. Perhaps it's going to go. When we get people of that level who are well funded, who are independent, I think we'll be strengthening the counties. And that is what we wanted. So that issue of people coming to the center to beg for money is not there. Mr. Speaker, the CDF has actually helped us to realize that if the money is devolved to the grassroots level, it works better. So creating the ward fund, the counting ward fund, and if the appropriate laws are put in place, I think that fund will be as effective as CDF in actually implementing the devolved function. I can tell you, in my own county, there are things we would want to do, but we have to go to the county. You want to even just improve fisheries. You want even to do simple horticulture. Now, if this money was available, women just want to borrow small money for trade. If this money was